Hey, what's happening? Welcome back to the James Kennedy Podcast. Thanks for joining us once again. How awesome was Professor Mark Galeotti last week? My mind was blown, as I hope yours was as well. What a fascinating chat. If you haven't checked that one out yet, please do go back and give it a listen. But you know I like to keep this thing varied and explore a whole range of different issues and subjects as and when we goddamn feel like it. So this week we're switching gears and we are jumping in with both feet into the urgently important issue of men's mental health more broadly, and more than likely delving into the issue of masculinity, our changing society, and hopefully we'll get into what we can do to make any of it any better and keep things moving in the right direction. And I can think of no one better to have that particular conversation with than today's guest, because I'm here today with George Bell, a writer, co-founder of the popular online community for men's issues, Jack, and the author of a brand new book coming out this very week called Be a Man About It, Building a Healthier Idea of Masculinity. George, thanks so much for being here, brother. How the hell are you doing?
Hey, James. Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me. I feel good. I feel obviously it's a big week, book's coming out, you know, there's a lot of emotions with that, pride and terror and anxiety and all the rest of it. But my first copies have literally just arrived, so I've had my books have arrived today. Nice big box of them. So yeah, still just kind of literally as we record this now, I'm still feeling the emotions of seeing, you know, my first book for the first time.
I bet.
So yeah, I think it's an interesting one because, you know, obviously personally and professionally for me, it's a really big thing. My first book, I feel really proud about that. And also there's this feeling of, you know, the subject matter, it's you know, it's not like a sort of fiction book about fantasy or whatever. It's a non-fiction book about what's happening to men and, you know, how too many men are losing their lives, you know, too soon or too early. So I think I'm also holding that emotion of, you know, professional pride and also kind of, I don't know what the word is, but like, you know, I know this book is needed and I know these conversations are needed. So there's a sort of sense of
responsibility, maybe pressure.
Yeah, I think that's the right one. Yeah.
Well, mate, we are going to talk all about the book and the contents within it throughout the rest of the conversation. And kudos to yourself for tackling this issue as well in a book form, because, you know, men, unfortunately, are not, for reasons I'm sure we're going to explore, you know, usually at the forefront of talking about these sorts of issues. So I think just the fact that you've done it is amazing and urgently needed. But before we unpack all that stuff, I thought maybe we could start with just getting a little bit of background on your personal journey with this stuff. You know, what's your personal connection to the issue? How did you get started with exploring this? And let's take it from there.
Yeah. And, you know, I think in some ways that's probably the most important question that we can go through here. And I do think it is really, really important because, you know, I've written this book because of a very personal story and a very personal journey. And I think it's really important for people to know that because, you know, I know that, you know, my story is not necessarily unique. I know that men all around the world will be able to relate to it. So I think that's why it's so important. You know, I've not just written this book just for the sake of it or just to try and fill up bookshelves. It's come from a real place. And for me, that was that just over 10 years ago, I was making plans to take my own life. So I was in a, you know, really difficult spot, really, really challenging spot. Obviously, grappling with a real mental health issue there. It was depression, anxiety, and that culminated in these suicidal thoughts. So, you know, really, really difficult period there. And I think, you know, without going too much maybe into the mental health issue side of things, which obviously is a big part of the story, the other big part of it, and, you know, what's pertinent to this conversation is there was a masculinity part to that story as well. And it arguably the bigger part of that story, really. I think at the time I didn't realize that, but in subsequent years of going through therapy and recovery and all the rest of it, I realized how big a part of the story that is. And the reason for that is because it was almost my sense of masculinity or what I thought it meant to be a man that kind of created the like foundations where I then ended up struggling.
Right.
And then when I was struggling, I didn't reach out. I didn't do anything about it. You know, I didn't just sort of wake up one day and then I was depressed and anxious and had suicidal thoughts. You know, these things, it was like there was a journey and it was made worse because of the silence, this sort of self-imposed silence. And, you know, I had a really good network around me, great family, great friends, I had a supportive girlfriend. You know, on paper, I had that support network.
Yeah.
And I told no one. I told none of them what was going on. You know, even my girlfriend that I was sharing a bed with every night knew
Wow.
nothing about what was going on, you know, in my head. And I think that, you know, we'll obviously get into all this, but I think that that's really sad. That's really, really sad when I look back on that. Like, I feel sad for myself back
Yes.
then, and then I feel sad for the men that I know are still in this position now. But yeah, I just didn't think I could talk about it. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know what was going on, didn't have the language, didn't think I had a right to talk about it, didn't think I could because I'd be, you know, shunned and shamed, and that's not what men do. And yeah, I think I just thought that kind of if I ignore it, it will go away. And I sort of played into the masculine code of suppression and silence. And yeah, stuff, you know, it didn't, you know, obviously it didn't make stuff go away. And
Yeah.
yeah, got to a real crisis point. And yeah, you know, had to then work on the mental health issue side of stuff. But I've had to also then sort of deconstruct and rebuild my sense of masculinity over the last few years as well, because
Right.
as I said, I think that was almost the cause of where I ended up.
That's so interesting, man. I can relate on so many ways as well. I mean, I've had very similar journeys myself. What was the turning point in you then overcoming that to a degree in seeking help? Because that's a massive one, isn't it? You know, for us
Yeah.
men. What was the turning point for you?
Yeah. So my girlfriend at the time that I mentioned, she called me out for abnormal behavior. I'd become very cold and withdrawn and distant and pretty emotionless, I think, which obviously is really, really hard for a partner who, you know, wants love and time and attention, all the rest of it. So she called me out. She said something like, "You're so cold and distant sometimes," which was like a sort of slap to the face in a way, because that's not in my character. I think that's not who I want to be. I want to be, you know, warm and someone that people enjoy to be around. And I think up until that point, I felt like I was keeping the two worlds quite separate of, you know, what I was really feeling. And then out in public, I was making sure I kind of fit into the masculine code of happy and jovial and confident and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I think when she said that, you know, that it sort of tore that veil down. It was obviously clear very quickly that the two worlds were sort of merging. So yeah, I think I just felt confronted with it, and, you know, fair play to her. She wasn't going to let me off the hook. She said that and then let that hang there. She was just staring at me. She wasn't going to kind of let me squirm my way out of it. So I just said something. I don't really remember exactly what it was. I think it was something like, "I feel weird," or something's going on in my head. It was very inarticulate, which is fine. I think that's the only language I had for it back then. I didn't know I had a mental health issue or any of that. But the important thing is I said something. For the first time ever on this issue, I had voiced it, and someone else knew. Again, I don't remember the conversation we had after. I think it was awkward, and I don't think I could make eye contact and all the rest of it. But it was out in the open, and then she later went and told my mum, which I was angry about at the time, very grateful for now. And both of them were, you know, instrumental then of stepping in, getting me to go and see a doctor, getting a diagnosis, getting into treatment. And then, you know, it was just a journey from there, therapy and all the rest of it. But it really started with, you know, a woman and then two women kind of intervening and, yeah, sort of forcing me to open up in a way. And that really kickstarted the journey of recovery.
Well, amen to that, man. And, you know, kudos and hats off to the strong women in your life that help to support you in that direction, because, you know, just taking that first step is often the hardest, but, you know, the most powerful one that we can take. So what forms of treatment did you explore? Which ones did you try? Which ones did you resonate with? Which ones did you stick with?
Yeah, it was a real journey. I think journey is the right word, because it wasn't like I went to doctor and I was like, "Here's what's going on with me," and then it was like, "Right, here's your plan, stick to that, you'd be better in 2 weeks or whatever." And I think I approached it in that way at first. I had to overcome that. Again, you know, that was my sense of masculinity as a way. I took a very manly approach to it of, you know, DIY, quick fix, like, surely it'll be done in a couple of weeks, not that big a deal. I had to, and also actually, I think the big part is I was fighting against myself. So the emotions that I was feeling, particularly, depression, anxiety, they're difficult emotions. I was the way I saw it was like I was at war with myself, and I remember at the time it was a really strong feeling of like wanting to almost crush the depression and crush the anxiety, and
Right.
like it was like an
Yeah,
invading
yeah, yeah.
army.
Yes, I get that. Yeah.
That just made everything worse because these things are still emotions, and they're still a part of us, and they're there for a reason, and they're trying to
Yes.
tell us something. But I fought back against that narrative for a long, long time. I remember someone, I think it might have been the doctor, recommended this book to me. It's called Self-Help for Your Nerves by Claire Weeks. She sold millions of copies of it. I think it's like a worldwide, best-selling book. She obviously knows what she's talking about. I read the book and I was like, bullshit. Because she said how you've got to slow down and work with your anxiety, and that's how you kind of recover. And I remember at the time I was like, I'm not listening to this nonsense. Like I'm not working with my anxiety. Stuff didn't get better, so I eventually had to learn to kind of go slow with this stuff, and work with what was going on and pay attention to what it was telling me. So I think that was a big part of it. I did try medication. I tried three different types of antidepressants. I didn't gel with them, so I asked the doctor to come off them. I know plenty of people who have taken them, still take them, life-saving stuff. I think for me, yeah, it affects everyone differently. For me, I just felt like it stripped everything, all my emotion away. So I didn't feel as bad anymore, but I just felt nothing, and that was a really scary feeling. So yeah, I came off them. Therapy. I started I started with CBT, and which is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's one of the more sort of like modern therapies, I guess you'd call it, and the whole sort of premise of it is you can change your thoughts and your behaviors, which changes how you feel. So it's very interesting, and it's generally a shorter kind of period of therapy, generally speaking. And I think I was attracted to that because, again, as a man, I was like, okay, it's more practical, it's shorter, it's changing my behaviors. I don't have to kind of dredge up the past loads and all this
Yeah.
sort of stuff. So I did that, which was really helpful for me. That was really, really helpful for me. I think I only had about 2 months worth of sessions, and then I took a load of tools from that and learnings, and then I implemented that like daily. I was religious with it. It was my main priority every day. It was just focusing on those tools. There's all kinds of different stuff I was doing. Like there's like journaling stuff and all this, and I was like taking a notebook with me everywhere I went. Like I'd go out with my mates. It was winter at this point. I'd go out with my mates, have my journal in my pocket.
Wow.
If I need to do anything on train. So I was just absolutely religious with it because I really, really wanted to get better. So I think that combination of that, learning to slow down, understanding more of my emotions. I was telling people at this point, I told my girlfriend at the time and my mum, neither of them had run away and shamed me. So I sort of learned I could tell people when my world wouldn't collapse in on itself. So I think that combination of telling people, therapy, understanding myself better, and time together was the sort of the like medicine I needed, I guess. And then I got better, and I went traveling and stuff for a bit, which was cool. But I went back to therapy a few years later, not in a period of crisis, but I got into a new relationship with my partner, who I'm still with now, and a bunch of stuff just came up for me that was like, whoa, there's quite a lot here, and I could feel like related threads to some of this place I've been in before. So that's when I want to say older and wiser, I was like, okay, I should get ahead of this one. So that's when I went to therapy, and I went to like psychotherapy. So specifically, I wanted to go deep and do the harder work and kind of dredge up the past, which I'd avoided before. And that was really useful and transformational for me, because I think then that's when I really went into, what does it mean for me to be a man, and some of the stuff that's impacted me throughout my life, right back to childhood, and how my sense of being a man and masculinity as part of that has caused me to feel certain ways, which caused this crisis a few years ago, and maybe has caused some stuff to keep coming up. So I think, yeah, that was work that came a few years later, and was deeper, and is all part of the journey.
Did you do any physical things as well? Because obviously there's a huge interconnectivity in the physiology of this thing, between the physical and the mental. Did you explore things like meditation or exercise or going to the gym or anything more physically orientated?
Yeah, good point actually. I missed some of the sort of more like basic stuff, quote unquote. I was doing then as well. So yeah, for me, I just went walking, like that was good for me, and long time, like hour, 2 hours a day. I should say I was living with my parents at the time, and I had quit my job. I just wasn't in a good enough place to hold it down. I was in a situation where I was somewhat fortunate, I guess, where I was able to kind of live at home with my parents. I didn't have sort of kids or anything like that sort of responsibility, so I was able to be really, really quite ruthless with my recovery.
Yeah.
But I guess even if I was working, I would have had to just try and build this stuff in different ways. But yeah, for me, walking I think was really, really important. I got out of the house, I left my phone at home, could try and sort of clear my head a little bit. You're just out and moving. So I think that was a really big one for me. I really worked on my diet. I think I'd not. I just graduated from university when all this was happening, and yeah, I guess uni students' diets are notoriously unhealthy.
Like musicians.
Yeah, and I think I just hadn't. I'd never had it sounds ridiculous now, but I'd never had the proper education around diet and gut, and the gut mind sort of
Connection,
relationship. Yeah. So I was just putting stuff into my body that was impacting me in different ways.
Right.
A lot of alcohol, a lot of coffee, junk food, ready meals, like not much organic whole foods. So of course that's going to make me feel worse and more anxious. So I was really careful around that. Like I cut out alcohol for a bit. I cut out coffee. Really focused on like my fruit and veg, and trying to cut out ready meals and stuff like that. So I think what's really challenging with mental health is you can't. It's really hard to point to the thing that made a difference, or even say how much difference it made. It's not like you twist your ankle or break a leg or whatever. You have your things, and they can sort of know which is going to do which bit of healing at what point. Like we never know with this stuff. I did try some meditation, for example. I didn't really gel with it. Was it making a difference? Maybe it was. I don't know. But I think it's just you find the combination of stuff that you think and feel makes you feel a bit better.
Yeah. It's like I think you have to do the trial and error to a certain extent. Like it's just music to my ears, because I've also done all of those things as well, and some of them worked for me, others didn't. But for me, it's a personal prescription, isn't it? That you have to kind of put together for yourself. You have to try all these things and see what works. And walking, I think, is a pretty universal one. And leaving the phone at home, just having space to yourself to disconnect from the noise and the chaos of the world in your life. I think that seems to be a pretty universal one.
Yeah, it is, and I think for men, I think it's one they don't always approach in the right way, because I think, and I'll explain because it sounds ridiculous, like it's just walking, right? But I think it's men always, a lot of men always want to be busy, so a lot of men will tell you that they do go for walks, they go for walks a lot. But I guarantee it's with a podcast in, or it's with music in, or it's texting, or it's something.
Right.
And, obviously people want to listen to stuff, that's fine. But I think the deeper issue with men, a lot of men, is they don't know how to sit with their own thoughts and their own boredom and their own feelings, or it makes them really scared if they do and uncomfortable. So I think that a lot of men just don't sit with what's going on. And also they're kind of conditioned not to. Like, we're told as men, to be a man you should be busy, right? Busy and successful, and I'm sure you
do stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you will have met the same people who they almost tell you how busy they are, and it's as a way of kind of communicating their masculinity.
Well, I'm one of them, dude. Yeah, I mean that's me. Yeah,
we all do, right? No, like I'll if someone asks me this week, like, oh, how's the book stuff going, I'm not going to go, I'm not really doing much. So you want to kind of communicate you're busy, right? But I think when we dig into that, it's clear why we do that, because we're told that busyness equals success, and success equals you're a real man. So I think that a lot of men don't know how to sit with what's going on with themselves, and I think when you really think about that, like I know I wasn't doing that back then. but or haven't done for a long, long time. I'd get on a train, I'd have to be doing something. I couldn't just sit there and look out the window. So it became really important to go for walks, but without my phone, and to actually just kind of sit with or walk with what was coming up, and what feelings I was feeling and what my thoughts were. So I think that's the really, really crucial part
That's
of.
fascinating. I haven't gotten to that stage yet.
It's hard.
What happens when you do that? Like, the idea of that terrifies me.
Yeah, like exactly, and I think that's why it's like so powerful. I think, and
Right.
it's not easy. It's funny, like it sounds ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous when you say it's not easy to leave your phone at home and go for a walk. But I think that shows, and this is so much what I focus on in my book, it actually just shows the sort of decades of cultural conditioning that we're working against with this stuff.
Right.
Like it's the same with, a lot of the messaging around men's mental health in recent years has been to say to men, just talk, just go and talk. Again, sort of maybe missing the fact that actually for decades men have been conditioned to not talk. So
Right.
it's not a case of just saying the thing and then it's easy to do. So I think it's the same with this kind of thing. But I would say just start small, and you see what comes
What
up.
comes
Like
up?
yeah, start. I mean, start really small. Like if you want to pop downstairs to grab yourself a coffee, a lot of people will just grab the phone instinctively, put it in your
Yes.
pocket, just leave it upstairs, and just kind of see how it feels going down there without that, and just being with your thoughts, and then you kind of expand it out. Can you go to the local coffee shop, and then you go
Oh,
home, and then can you go for a 10-minute walk? And
just thinking about that makes my chest tight. Isn't that so bizarre? Like, I don't even know what about that freaks me out. I mean, I'm sure you probably delved into that, but my physical reaction to just the imagining doing nothing is that's so bizarre.
yeah, and and sitting with your thoughts and feelings, because that's everything that we have, as men, have been taught to never do. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, how did the men in your life react then? Because, as you mentioned, the people that got you on this track were both women. But when you were on the journey and you're going out with your mates and you're taking your journal with you, like you mentioned, and you're starting to, talk more openly about these things, what was the reaction you got from your male friends? Was it what you were expecting, kind of a pushback, a kind of a macho, man up and banter and things like that? Or were you like pleasantly surprised?
yeah, I was definitely surprised that it wasn't. I'd kind of catastrophized this situation of how I was going to almost be neglected, and I'd have all this banter flying my way and all this kind of stuff, and
Yep.
that didn't come. So I think that was a nice surprise. I say nice surprise, but when I look back now, it was just my kind of anxiety that was making up these scenarios. I knew they were a really good group of guys, so I knew that there wasn't going to be kind of ill will there. I think what came from it, and I think what's really important to say for a lot of groups, is that it was everyone dealt with it really well, but it was a bit awkward, and people didn't know what to say, and it was the first time a lot of people had been confronted with something like that. So it was a bit of like, sorry, sorry, mate, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
should we just go grab a drink or something? Yeah. So and I wasn't expecting this, but it wasn't like someone sat me down, then I'd get a half an hour free therapy
Yeah,
session from a
yeah,
mate.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think I had to learn that they were there to sort of they were there as like a support structure, but I had to do the work myself. But I think just knowing that they were there and they knew and they were okay with it, I think it almost helps you to
Keep going maybe with it.
yeah, it helps to keep going. I didn't get any. I didn't get any hate or anything like that. I got a couple of comments in a way, I think, where people just didn't understand it. They were just, you could just see like, well, hold on, but you're always out and laughing. So I got a bit of that, but I think, yeah, no kind of ill will, which I just feel is the case for most people, that
100%.
there is such a good network around people. And I know it might come in different forms and different sizes for people, but I think we, as a society, have demonized mental health and demonized emotions, and almost made out, we told people they shouldn't talk about them. But we're all going through stuff.
And
Like,
for men, this is a serious issue as well. This is no joke. I mean, correct me if I'm quoting the out of date figures here, but is it true that it's still the leading cause of death for all men under 50 is suicide?
Yeah, in the UK, yeah.
Well, that's horrific, man. I mean, that proves that this is clearly not just some fringe issue that only affects, certain men that perhaps need to man up or something. This is a massive, massive problem.
Yeah, it's one of the leading causes of death worldwide. Suicide in men is greater than in women in pretty much, if not every single country around the world. So and then every minute of every single day, a man takes his own life somewhere around the globe. So, you know, it's a global issue that we're dealing with.
Yeah,
It's not just like one country or one culture. It really is a global issue. And I think that I don't think we focused on it enough. It's not just mental health as well, by the way. That there's scary stats around men in their more men are dying from or more like to die from cancer, cardiovascular disease. They've got a shorter lifespan than women. More likely to be homeless, have an addiction, fall behind in education, lose their job, commit crime, be a victim of crime.
right,
It's I think actually when you take the data, and obviously there's a lot of reasons why this stuff can happen. It's not you can't just paint one linear line to it, but actually when you look at the broader picture around men in health and life and work, it's a worry. It is a worrying picture. There's a lot of
right.
stuff going on that I think we've sort of missed or not talked about, and there there is definitely sort of real reasons for this, and I think none of this is to take away from where we've been focusing in recent years, feminism and LGBTQ plus and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is still really, really important and crucial. I think for me, what's important with this is it's just, and also recognizing that there is a real challenge going on with men.
Right.
And I think we've maybe sort of assumed that because men have had all this, unearned privilege for so long and always been at the top, that they're just doing all right. And
Right.
we've sort of forgotten that kind of privilege at the top isn't shared equally down the ladder. And yeah, there are a lot of men struggling in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, brilliantly put, man. And that leads nicely into the next question, because I want to sort of steer us now in specifically to the issue of masculinity, because I know that is a central theme to your book as well as your own personal journey. And before we get into the kind of hows and the whys of that state of flux that masculinity, may be in right now due to the, the much needed societal changes that we're going through, what is your feeling on where we're at currently? Are there rays of hope coming through the cracks, or are we far, far behind where we need to be on this conversation?
I think it's a bit of both. Is what I'm sat with. There's definitely rays of hope. I think let's start with that. There's definitely rays of hope. We're here talking about it now. My book's been published on the subject. I mean, publishers of businesses, they have to publish stuff that they think is going to sell. If there wasn't going to be people that would buy this, they wouldn't publish it. So there is clearly an appetite for the conversation. We're seeing more celebrities talk about it. It's coming out in the news more. So, I feel hopeful around that. I really, really do. And then I think that we're still quite immature we're in the immature phase around this conversation. I don't think we've reached the point where we're having really healthy, expanded conversations on this stuff. Like, I think this is starting to change, but I think generally if you see masculinity talked about in the media, it just focuses on extremes. So, you've got these sort of harmful influences, and you've got stories of the most violent and dangerous and aggressive men. And all of that is a really, really important part of the conversation, but it is only one part and it's an extreme. And I think our counter to that in recent years has just been to say to men, you just need to cry more. Just it's okay to cry, which is, there's a important message in there, but that is also another extreme.
Yes.
And I think that's basically been the conversation. It's been very binary, very just extremes. And I think actually, if you take most men, I think most sort of, good men, they don't align themselves with this really extreme sense of masculinity, this sort of violent sense.
Yeah.
But they also don't actually want to be, overly emotional all the time. They understand it, but they don't. It's not how they want to be all the time. And I think if we can't have a more sort of nuanced conversation on masculinity, we're actually just going to miss a lot of men. And I think And there is also still a narrative of, you know, how dare we sort of talk about men and masculinity when there's so much else still going on in the world. I've had it myself. Just talking about my book, I've had stuff from people being like, essentially, like, how do you think you have a right to talk about men when there's still stuff going on for women or other groups? And
Yeah.
I think that is still there's still a real sense there's still a lot of anger and frustration and all that kind of stuff floating around, and I think that leads to a place of us versus them, a zero sum game
Yes.
mindset,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's still very, very present, and that is a real barrier to progress with this conversation. I've had to spend so much of my time like having to sort of justify why I think this conversation is important and other conversations are important, rather than just getting into the actual conversation and getting to the parts of helping people. So I think all of that is there, meaning that yeah, there's hope, and I think we have some maturing to do around how we have this conversation.
Excellently put. Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. So why then do you think there is such a resurgence in appeal with a version of masculinity that's kind of outdated now? You know, why are we seeing a resurgence of the strong man? You know, Donald Trump, Andrew Tate, Putin, Farage, you know, Tommy Robinson, you know, these kind of tell it like it is and get shit done kind of guys, no matter who you got to stomp all over, you know, the lone cowboy out there, you know, imposing his macho will on the world. Why is that making a resurgence, and why is it still appealing to so many men?
Yeah, I mean, they've been the type of men that have always been popular, right? They're the form they take might change, but they're always the men that are successful and they have money and they have women around them and they're strong and whatever. That's been the sort of form that it's always taken throughout history. It's just maybe, you know, changed a little bit these days with social media influencers and stuff. But I think, yeah, they fit the traditional masculine code perfectly of what men have been told they should aspire to have
Right.
in order to be a man. So, yeah, you see your Andrew Tates who, yeah, he's working out, he's strong, he's got women around him, he's got this money, and that's what a lot of boys and men have been told. You do that, and you're a man, basically. So I think that is, you know, that is one part of the challenge. I think another part of it, which I don't have sort of hard stats around this, but I've read reports from like charity workers and teachers who are working with, you know, boys in schools, and they kind of say that the because of this narrative around men, which we just touched on, where there's this sort of this narrative that focuses on extremes. I think particularly in the media, where we've focused on the most extreme versions of men, and we talk a lot about toxic masculinity, and I think people use that phrase. Some people use that phrase unhelpfully, and it's become like a blanket catch-all term
For masculinity,
for
generally.
masculinity. Yeah, and what that's done is pushed a bunch of people away, because we're humans. We want to feel pride. We want to feel good in ourselves.
Yeah.
And if the message you're getting all the time is that, you know, you're bad, you're broken, you're wrong, and then you've got, you know, enter sort of stage right, you've got these people who, whether rightly or wrongly, make men feel proud to be a man.
Right.
You can see why it's a seductive message. And, you know, I think it is obviously important to there is individual accountability in this as well. I think, you know, it's not a case of like boys and men are just getting completely sucked in over to these messages. They are also choosing to kind of listen to this stuff. So I think that is an important part. But we can see how we've cultivated the situation where these messages are being surfaced more. The algorithm is rewarding them as well. They reward this extreme, you know, clickbaity sense of content. So I think we've created a situation where, you know, a lot of men and boys are feeling displaced. Their sort of role in society is changing, which, you know, is right and is needed. We've needed a rebalance and, you know, more equality in society. I think that's everyone, you know, all decent people would agree with that. And obviously, you know, that has caused some displacement in men, and I think they've not maybe been given or told the sort of new way or new position to fill. I think if you look at feminism in recent years, they've had sort of a clear goal, clear message of empowerment and equality and justice. And I think we've maybe not got that same message from men. So I think a lot of men are like, what do I do and where do I everyone's telling me I'm bad and toxic. I've got these influences over here that the algorithm keeps showing me that are telling me I can feel good about myself. I think when you put all that together and, oh, that's actually what I meant to be as a man, because that's what I was taught growing up, I think you can see how we've kind of got into a situation of like a perfect storm, a
Right.
bunch of stuff all kind of happening at the same time. And there are good people out there, good men out there. There are men talking about emotional vulnerability and compassion and community and being allies to women and all that kind of stuff. The algorithm just doesn't want to reward that as much, sadly.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. But the tagline to your book is building a healthier idea of masculinity. So what, in your words, is a healthier idea of masculinity?
So I think for me it's really important that there's not just like a 7 point 7 bullet point checklist here that I reel off and everyone goes and does that and then you're there, because that's not how we work as humans, right? Everyone's different and unique, and we're built differently, and they value different things in different ways. Like for me, I don't love the gym and this sort of huge sense of physicality. It's just not something that important to me. Whereas I know for a lot of men it really is. They would say that is a massive part of their masculinity. And I think that it's that kind of thing that's maybe almost been labeled toxic in recent years, where you then lose men. So I think it's recognizing that different people want different things. But for me, what makes it healthy is when we can all have an expanded sense of masculinity. So we recognize that masculinity isn't as narrow and rigid as we've made it. Like I think we've just made it into this thing that is be strong, be independent, be powerful, be successful. Don't talk about your emotions. There you go, you're a man. Forgetting the fact that a lot of stuff which we typically label feminine traits, things like compassion and empathy and emotional expression, it's just part of being human. It's not a sex specific thing. It's a human specific thing. We all have them within us. If we didn't need them as men, if we didn't need emotions as men, I'm sure they would have been stamped out of us from evolutionary point of view at some point. So I think it's just recognizing that we can expand our sense of masculinity. We can lean into and value stuff from the traditional sense. It's okay to want to be strong and powerful and independent, and to have times where you want to be resilient and show grit and toughness and whatever. That's absolutely fine. And I think it's recognizing that within us we all have this emotions and the need to express them, and we need other humans, we need to connect and have a community around us and all that kind of stuff. At what point we lean into what traits and to how much is subjective and will be different throughout our lives. But it's just recognizing that, and I think recognizing that we're all humans, and you have to have respect to other humans, and that includes we're equal with women, and I think being able to take accountability over our mistakes as well. I think all of that together is just being a decent human, and for me that's what a healthy sense of masculinity is recognizing that as men and as humans, we're far more expansive than we've perhaps made ourselves in recent years.
Amen. Brilliantly put, brother. So what can we do as men within our society to promote this healthier idea of masculinity, along with and amongst our fellow men, our brothers, our sons, our friends? How do we move this forward?
Yeah, so if we start with kind of better emotional awareness, I think that's the sort of foundation, and not only to focus on the emotional side, because we've already touched on a lot of men that's not the whole message that they'll relate to. But I think we have to start with that, and to what level we do that will be different for different people. And I'm not saying people will listen to this then immediately they're completely in touch with their emotions and they understand them all and all the rest of it. But I think if you can just shift your mindset to realize that emotions are natural, they're normal, it's biology. This stuff predates us by hundreds of thousands of years. Like, we've only been around for, I've only been around for a few decades. Like, who am I to come in and say, try and doubt biology that's predated me for so long? So I think it's recognizing that we're dealing here with, we're not dealing with sort of subjective opinion. We're dealing with like science and biology. So just recognizing that emotions are normal, and whatever's there is there for a reason. It might feel weird talking about it, and I'm not saying we're immediately going to go talk about it, but just recognize that they are there for a reason, and don't fight them. I think that's sort of the bedrock. And then from that, I think that's how you can start to build healthier connections with people and real connections with people. And yeah, talk about the real stuff. I think we need to be able to have better conversations around everything that men go through every day. And that's work, that's parenthood, that's relationships and friendships, that's alcohol and drugs and nights out,
Right.
it's sex, it's porn use, gambling, all this kind of stuff. I think hair loss. There's all sorts of conversations in there which feel taboo, feel shameful. They're so wrapped up in emotions that we avoid them. And so men just kind of struggle with this stuff in silence. And you'll probably have a friendship group where people are experiencing the same thing, or at least they're all going through something, but they feel like they can't talk about it. So I think the more we can just actually normalize those conversations and have those conversations, however inarticulate they might be. Like I said, when I first opened up, my conversations weren't articulate, but I'd started, and then that meant I talked to more people, and then we all, as a group, sort of our emotional articulate, literacy level kind of leveled up
Yes.
as we went through it. The more we can have those conversations, the more we will be talking about masculinity. Like, if you have a conversation about hair loss, you are talking about masculinity. You're getting into the threads of what it means to be a man and masculinity. So it's not easy. None of this stuff is easy, as we've sort of already touched on. I wish it was. I wish we could just close this and just sort of tick it off straight away. But I think it just takes starting. It just takes someone to start. I think we're for many of us, we're coming up against decades of a certain version of masculinity, and just starting a conversation, even if it's just texting a mate and saying, I've not seen you much recently. What's going on? That is just starting to unwork some of that cultural conditioning of silence, and that's how everything starts, really.
Beautiful. I totally agree. And what I found is when I started doing it, everyone else around me started doing it as well. Like, it took me a long time to just be a bit more open about what I was going through, similar experiences as yourself. And as soon as I started just giving a little bit to my friends, I opened up this tidal wave of dialogue. And now we took all my really like traditionally macho kind of men in my life. We all have these like heart-to-heart conversations. We all tell each other, "Oh, I love you, brother," and stuff like that. We check in with each other. It kind of like, by you opening the conversation a little bit, you make it okay for all your mates to do so as well. And I've noticed that as soon as I started talking about it, it kind of made it okay for everyone around me to go, "Oh man, I feel the same way as well." And now we're all exploring it together, and we're all still men. We're all still doing our thing, So yeah, I totally agree with you. So George, thank you so much, mate. We got to give a plug to the book. Be a Man About It, Building a Healthier Idea of Masculinity is out on January 22nd. So whenever you listen to this podcast, we're recording this about 2 days before that. So it will probably be out when you listen to it. Please go and get it. It's available in all the stores. It looks amazing. It sounds amazing. You need to get it. Get it for all your men friends. Get it for everybody. And George, we wish you the best of luck with the book. Best of wishes with the mission and everything you got coming up. And look forward to following the rest of your journey, brother.
Thanks so much, James. Really appreciate being here.
Take care, man. Good to meet you.
Bye.
George Bell, ladies and gentlemen, his brand new book, Be a Man About It, Building a Healthier Idea of Masculinity, will more than likely be out now by the time you hear this podcast. So I highly recommend that you go and get a copy. Masculinity and men's mental health and the truly shocking figures around men's suicide is in no way a niche issue. If you've got a brother, if you've got a son, if you've got a male partner, these issues will be affecting them. And unfortunately, it's an issue that is still nowhere near enough talked about. So maybe this book, and hopefully this book, will be the catalyst to opening up a much more mainstream conversation around these issues. So go and grab yourself a copy. The book is available anywhere you get your books. You can also follow George Bell on his socials at Georgie Bell. And whilst you're in the habit of buying books and clicking on stuff, you can also subscribe to this sexy little podcast that you're listening to right now. The James Kennedy Podcast is available on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, even YouTube, damn it. Wherever you get your podcast, please give us a subscribe, a like, a follow, a thumbs up, a thumbs down, whatever you got to do. Just give us something, damn it. And I hope you found the conversation today informative, interesting, inspiring. And I hope that I'm going to be able to continue bringing you these kinds of conversations every week. So until next time, loads of love, behave yourselves, take care of yourselves, take care of each other.